The auto industry wasn't ready. They thought they had time. They thought the usual players, Silicon Valley disruptors, Chinese giants, European legacy automakers, would keep setting the pace for innovation. For decades, India had been seen as a consumer, not a creator. A vast market, yes, but not a competitor, not a threat. That illusion shattered the day Mahindra pulled the curtain back and revealed something no one expected. A new generation of electric vehicles that didn't just meet global standards, they shattered them. In a single move, Mahindra shifted from being a regional player to a global disruptor, and the ripple effects have already begun to shake the foundation of the automotive world. It didn't begin with fanfare. There were no viral tweets, no overproduced unveilings with lasers and techno beats, just a quiet reveal. Two models, the BE.6E and the XUV.E9, and a press packet that didn't scream for attention. But the specs did all the screaming. A purpose-built EV platform, dual motor configurations, Unreal Engine dashboards, a built-in AI assistant called Maya, and a price point that was, frankly, absurdly competitive. Industry insiders didn't know whether to dismiss it or panic. Some did both, but it was too late. The game had changed. Mahindra had been preparing for this moment in silence. While everyone else had been focused on short-term market share and flashy prototypes, Mahindra had been working underground, reinventing itself. It wasn't just building electric vehicles. It was building an entirely new identity. It started with a question that many automakers had stopped asking. What if we didn't retrofit? What if we started over, from scratch? New design philosophy, new software, new platform, new manufacturing. That's exactly what they did. And the result was unlike anything India had ever seen, and unlike anything the world had expected from India. The BE.6E was the first shockwave. It looked like something from Europe. Sleek, aerodynamic, powerful, but it was smarter. The Inglo platform it rode on wasn't just an engineering shift, it was a philosophy. Built from the ground up for electric propulsion, Inglo eliminated legacy baggage. Flat floors meant more cabin space. A low center of gravity meant tighter cornering and better performance. Battery placement and thermal management were optimized from day one, not as an afterthought. The result? A real-world range of up to 310 miles in a sub-7-second 0 to 60 time. But that wasn't what made jaws drop. That was just the foundation. What turned heads was the intelligence, a fully integrated AI-powered operating system called Maya. It didn't just control the car, it learned. Driving habits, routes, music preferences, climate control settings, it adapted, evolved. Over time, it anticipated needs before drivers even voiced them. It wasn't just smart, it was predictive. Maya connected to 5G networks, pulled real-time traffic data, and updated routes on the fly. It monitored road conditions, adjusted suspension settings dynamically, and even synced with traffic infrastructure to help drivers hit green lights in sequence. Inside the car, the environment adjusted in real time based on passenger profiles. Lighting, temperature, seat positioning, everything. And all of this somehow came in at a price tag that undercut Western and Chinese rivals by tens of thousands of dollars. That's what triggered the first wave of fear. Tesla forums lit up. Analysts scrambled to remodel their global EV forecasts. BYD, once bullish on India, started scaling back on public expansion plans. Suddenly, Mahindra wasn't just a domestic success story, it was a global threat. Then came the XUV.E9, and that's when the fear turned into respect. Unlike the BE.6E, which felt like a bold declaration of Indian potential, the XUV.E9 was a direct message to international markets. This was not a prototype. This was not a concept. This was a production-ready, export-certified, AI-integrated, Unreal Engine-powered electric coupe SUV that looked like it had rolled off a luxury European assembly line. It wasn't trying to imitate, it was leading. 3 continuous digital displays stretched across the dash, each responsive, customizable, and powered by the same software engine used in 8AA video games. The user interface felt less like a car dashboard and more like a smart home hub. Maya, now in its enhanced version, could do even more. Adjusting ride stiffness mid-turn, analyzing biometric signals to detect driver fatigue, even syncing with smart homes to begin adjusting temperature and lighting before the vehicle arrived. This wasn't just luxury. This was deep systems-level intelligence at scale. And that scale mattered. Mahindra didn't build the XUV.E9 to impress. It built it to sell widely. The production strategy was not boutique. This wasn't a one-off. This was scalable, and it was already rolling off lines with homologation approved for European and South African markets. Indian vehicles had gone global before, but not like this. Not with this kind of design, this kind of software, and this kind of integrated vision. But what stunned the industry most wasn't the tech. It was the silence. There were no grand promises of 2 million unit gigafactories, no hype timelines, no bombastic CEOs throwing shade on Twitter, just performance. Quiet execution, confidence. In a world addicted to noise, Mahindra chose discipline. And it worked. What most people outside India didn't realize, and what insiders only now admit, is that Mahindra wasn't acting alone. This was part of something larger. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had spent years laying the groundwork for a clean energy revolution. While the rest of the world had fixated on subsidy battles and carbon credit trading, India had gone practical. Electric vehicle-friendly policies, production-linked incentives, battery manufacturing support, smart grid development, 5G infrastructure designed with mobility in mind, rural electrification efforts, and crucially, a focus on building not just vehicles, but ecosystems. Mahindra aligned early. It partnered with the government, leaned into the incentives, and built infrastructure to match. AI labs in Bengaluru, battery plants in Tamil Nadu, charging networks spreading through Tier 2 cities, quiet collaborations with Indian railways to test logistics AI, and a supply chain designed not around current demand, but around future dominance. This was not a company racing to catch up. This was a company pacing itself for a marathon it planned to win. And it wasn't just about EVs. It was about control of software, hardware, energy, logistics, and ultimately, identity. Mahindra wasn't selling cars, it was selling a future, one that no longer depended on the West for innovation. And that, more than anything else, is what shocked the industry. Panic didn't set in overnight. It crept in quietly. In Germany, auto executives began asking questions they hadn't considered in years. Are we falling behind? In Detroit, the usual confidence started to falter. Conference calls grew longer. Strategy sessions grew sharper. The Indian market, once dismissed as cost-sensitive and lagging in infrastructure, was now leading a software-first revolution. And at the center of it all was Mahindra, a name that, until recently, had barely registered on the radar of global EV giants. That was no longer the case. And the shock wasn't just technical, it was political. Across the world, governments had invested billions into clean mobility, tax breaks, subsidies, R&D grants. Yet none of those investments had produced a model as balanced as Mahindra's BE and XUV.E lines. Affordable, intelligent, scalable, and worst of all, for legacy players, inspiring. Because Mahindra wasn't operating in isolation. They had lit a fire in the Indian auto sector. Tata was already in motion, prepping a wave of next-gen electric models backed by massive government support. Ola Electric had doubled its investment in four-wheeler R&D. Startups like Pravag, Simple Energy, and Strom Motors were gaining momentum. The ecosystem wasn't growing. It was erupting. Behind closed doors, analysts started reassessing global EV forecasts. Goldman Sachs quietly revised its projections for Indian EV penetration. McKinsey issued a client memo warning about unanticipated EV threats emerging from the global south. The language had changed. India was no longer a developing follower. It was an unpredictable leader. And unpredictability doesn't sit well with industries built on control. Then came the data. Pre-orders for the XUV.E9 were clocking in faster than Mahindra's system could process. Waiting lists stretched beyond a year in some metros. Charging infrastructure usage tripled in 6 months. Maya, Mahindra's AI, had already begun collecting anonymous driving data to train its next update. In Tier 2 cities where Tesla hadn't even planned entry, EV adoption surged, and globally, automakers realized something terrifying. India wasn't just building cars. India was building expectations. Buyers in Europe began to ask why their EVs didn't offer the same intelligence. American drivers wondered why their cars felt outdated within a year, while Mahindra vehicles were receiving neural updates over the air, improving range and responsiveness in real time. China's dominance, once unquestioned, began to show cracks, not in production, but in perception. Because while BYD and NIO were busy dazzling the Chinese market with ultra-premium electric sedans, India was quietly redefining mainstream excellence. But that excellence wasn't accidental. It was engineered through strategy, risk, and something far more unsettling to rivals: intent. India wasn't competing just to join the table. It was flipping the table. Fiery Mahindra's strategic partnership with Volkswagen to use its MEB platform hadn't been about technology sharing. It had been a Trojan horse. Learn the architecture, modify it, build Inglo, replace it, move on. That's exactly what they did. The Inglo platform now outperforms its German counterpart on most benchmarks, and the AI operating system wasn't just a novelty, it was a signal, a challenge. Mahindra was saying, we don't just build cars, we build systems. And systems don't stay still. While the West argued over charging standards, India was building multi-protocol stations that accepted all formats. While American lawmakers debated EV incentives, India quietly made EV registration tax-free in dozens of states. While Europe focused on banning internal combustion, India focused on enabling access, converting buses, tuk-tuks, scooters. Entire city fleets shifted to electric almost overnight, and all of it fed into the data pipeline. Every route, every condition, every charge cycle. Mahindra's vehicles were learning in real time across 28 states and 8 union territories. No other country was producing that scale of EV intelligence across such diversity of climate, terrain, and use case. The reaction from legacy automakers was predictable. At first, dismissal. It's just a regional wave, some said. Then imitation. Rumors swirled that Ford was considering reviving its Indian operations to develop low-cost EVs in Pune. Mercedes-Benz, sensing a shift, launched an India-first AI research initiative. General Motors reopened quiet dialogues with tech firms in Hyderabad. The narrative was shifting and fast. But for all the industry scrambling, the most powerful shift wasn't industrial. It was emotional. For the first time, Indian consumers didn't feel like they were getting the hand-me-downs of global design. They weren't buying light versions of foreign models or outdated platforms rebranded with new stickers. These new EVs were born in India, engineered for India, and somehow better than what much of the world had to offer. The pride was real. Social media lit up with videos of fathers taking their daughters on the first ride in their XUV E9s. College students recorded startup sounds and dashboard animations like they were opening scenes from sci-fi movies. Kids drew Maya as a cartoon hero. A car wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol, a rolling statement. We don't follow anymore. We lead. And for Mahindra, that leadership wasn't just a marketing win. It was a mandate. They weren't done. Because while the world had been stunned by the present, Mahindra was already moving toward the future. In secret design studios in Chennai and Coimbatore, engineers were prototyping the next generation of battery chemistries. Sodium-ion, solid-state, even hybrid supercapacitor systems. Their R&D wasn't about catching up to Tesla or BYD. It was about leapfrogging both, quietly, systematically. The message was clear. Mahindra wasn't just part of the EV revolution. It was writing a new chapter, one that didn't need permission, validation, or applause from the West. And that was perhaps the most shocking realization for the auto industry. India wasn't trying to win the old race. India had started a new one. What came next wasn't noise. It was silence, the kind that follows realization. In Silicon Valley boardrooms and Tokyo strategy rooms, There was no more laughter, no more casual dismissal. There was only study, review, panic in slow motion. Because by the time the industry fully understood what Mahindra had done, India was already looking 5 years ahead. The country wasn't just in the EV game, it was altering the terrain beneath it. New announcements came at a dizzying pace. A government mandate requiring all new government fleet vehicles to be electric by 2026. A partnership between ISRO and Indian automakers to develop space-grade thermal management for battery systems. State-funded EV zones with zero GST on manufacturing components. India had shifted from reactive to aggressive, not waiting for international trends, but setting them. At the heart of this was a strategy no one expected from a country once stereotyped for outsourcing and volume manufacturing. India was now a software-first automotive nation. Mahindra's Maya wasn't just an assistant, she had become a platform. Independent developers were invited to build experiences on top of her, from regional language packs and accessibility tools to custom driving profiles and voice-driven commerce. The car had become an app ecosystem. Tesla had done it first, sure, but Mahindra had done it differently. They made it open, and that openness spread. Tata Motors launched its own AI architecture, rooted in Indic logic models and trained on India-specific datasets. Ola Electric integrated its battery-swapping scooters into the same energy network powering Mahindra's SUVs. Praveg began exporting modular powertrains to Africa and Southeast Asia. The idea was simple. If the West wouldn't share its technology, India would build its own, and then share it forward. Suddenly, a pattern emerged. Developing countries, once dependent on hand-me-down combustion tech from Germany or Japan, began turning to India, not just for cheap EVs, but for collaboration. Licensing Inglo, integrating Maya, reusing Indian battery recycling systems. What China had done for manufacturing, India was now doing for mobility, global democratization, a new kind of influence, soft but undeniable. For decades, the Western auto narrative had revolved around who could build the best car. India asked a different question. Who could build the best system? It wasn't just the vehicle, it was the battery pipeline, the energy grid, the software, the localization, the maintenance network. It was how an EV worked not just on launch day, but 5 years later on a rural road with patchy network access. It was how AI adapted to city chaos, to unmarked roads, to cows blocking traffic. Maya didn't just know traffic conditions. She knew how to navigate India. This deeply contextual intelligence became the blueprint for the future. Europe had engineering precision, America had design charisma, China had scale. But India had contextual resilience, the ability to build EVs that survived, thrived, and learned in the most demanding, dynamic environments on Earth. And the world started noticing. By 2026, Mahindra signed export deals to South America. Inglo was being licensed to an Indonesian startup. Maya was translated into Swahili, Thai, and Arabic. The Indian EV wave was no longer national, it was planetary. And the shock wasn't just that India had arrived, it was that it had done so with an entirely new philosophy, one that didn't seek to replicate Western successes, but replace the need for them. Even Elon Musk had to respond. On an investor call, he mentioned Mahindra by name, a rarity, calling the AI integration impressive, though stopping short of calling it a threat. But his silence said enough. Tesla was no longer playing alone at the frontier. The frontier had shifted. Back home in India, something else was happening. Something quieter, but maybe more important. A psychological shift. For decades, owning a car in India had been about compromise, sacrificing design for price, trading features for fuel efficiency, accepting second best as the norm. But now children grew up dreaming of Mahindra and Tata the way their parents once dreamed of Maruti. EVs weren't just aspirational, they were cool. Owning an electric wasn't about saving the planet, it was about belonging to the future, and that future was expanding fast. Indian automakers, flush with data and capital, began to invest beyond EVs. Air taxis, smart city traffic systems, energy storage hubs, Public-private partnerships for vehicle-to-grid integration. In a few cities, power outages had been reduced by 40%, not by building more power plants, but by letting EVs feed energy back into the grid during peak hours. Cars weren't just vehicles anymore. They were mobile infrastructure. The final blow to the old order came not from a boardroom, but from a village in Uttar Pradesh. A viral video showed a farmer driving his Mahindra EV to town, using Maya to check crop prices, adjust solar charging times, and listen to devotional music, all in Awadhi, his native tongue. In that single moment, the illusion shattered. This wasn't a rich man's revolution. This was India's revolution, and revolutions, once they start, don't go backward. Global automakers now face a stark choice: adapt or become irrelevant. It's no longer enough to slap a battery into a chassis and call it innovation. The age of mechanical prestige is over. This is the age of intelligent mobility, of contextual AI, of ecosystems, not empires. India didn't just shock the auto industry, it rewired its nervous system. The message is clear. From the deserts of Rajasthan to the tech parks of Bangalore, from the crowded lanes of Mumbai to the mountain passes of Sikkim, the future isn't coming from Detroit, it's not arriving from Stuttgart, and it's no longer exclusive to Palo Alto. The future is being designed in India. It's electric, it's intelligent, it's inclusive, and it has already left the charging station.